So I have a confession to make. Anytime I've thought about photographer to photographer material, like a video or an article, I tend to fixate on some unique angle to the content with a really in-depth collection of tons of photos from that lens with interesting talking points or issues that I came across, or behind the scenes footage that goes along with the whole series of pictures. And I feel like most of that stuff probably doesn't matter. I don't think it's helpful so much to fixate on making stuff about the stuff we use to make the thing we bought the stuff for. That was a mouthful, but I really want to try and do this year and just see how it goes is boil it back down to just one photo. What discussions like photography should, in my opinion, just always come back to, which is a singular photo. And I want to start the series with this picture, which is from, let's see, the metadata here. It is from the Nikon D4 way back in October 2013, shot with an 85 1.4. Now, it doesn't say it in the EXIF data, but I would bet anything it is the Sigma 85 1.4 HSM, the pre-art series Sigma. I used to love that lens. I did a really good job, but this photo is unique in that I don't normally shoot 85. It just happened to be the lens that I had on me. And before I went to switch to what I was thinking I would make this with, my 50 millimeter, I remember holding it up to the light that the videographer had set up and realizing, oh, this is awesome. There must be a fingerprint smudge or something on one of the lens elements, hopefully the front and not the rear element, that was creating this slice of focus. So breaking the scene down into its main kind of compositional flows, right? Like the way your eye draws across the scene. Typically, your eye is going to first go to the brightest part in the scene and then sort of search its way around in varying degrees down to darkness. And then what tends to happen is an oscillation between bright to dark. And if there's a human in the shot, you'll also tend to gravitate toward that person's face, right? So for sure, my eye immediately gets drawn to the bright kind of exploding light behind them, and then follows up and down in this diagonal manner, this light streak here, and then kind of secondarily to that, this light streak here, which is a lot less bright. But what I tried to do was, place the couple in a compositional way that really leaned against the super, super bright flare here, and while tucking, the light source itself right behind the groom. Now, editing wise, this is a bit of a trick, and we're actually gonna get into the editing in a second in Lightroom. I'm gonna pull up the raw file and show you how I would edit it today. But honestly, I'm not unhappy at all with how I edited this. But the tricky part was, in order for this streak to occur, there was almost certainly a small smudge or fingerprint on one of my lens elements, and because of that, it's gonna also cause a little bit of hazing. Back when this was made, the dehaze slider didn't even exist in Lightroom, so I'm quite sure I just used a lot of contrast. And then with contrast adds a lot of saturation. So I added a lot of contrast while desaturating to create essentially enough visibility of the bride's face that you could see here. Now, I know I got another shot of her also looking at the camera, but because I can't see the groom's face, I liked that her eyes were kind of down and away and his face was kind of tucked into her. It felt a little bit more natural and like a, in-between moment than what was actually happening, which was he was tucked in there because he's feeling kind of sick. And we'll get to that in a second. The other editing thing I want to talk about is this sort of oranginess against this purplish blue, which I almost certainly exaggerated using the gradient tool, which we'll get into in a second. But otherwise, breaking down other basic compositional positions, their hands are going across sort of this lower third, nicely settled in the rule of thirds there. And then the upper third, not much going on other than their heads didn't kind of intercept with that line, which I wouldn't worry about, but which I'm not even that worried about because there's no defined horizontal, line in the background or anything anyway. But they are nicely settled in that rule of thirds. Now, they're not centered in this shot. They're offset a little bit. I guess if I was cropping, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to recrop sort of a little bit tighter, but then I'm losing a lot of this really cool extra flare stuff up here. So overall, I'm actually really, really happy with the crop as well. But let's jump into Lightroom and see how it actually edits. You can ignore I changed the name of my Lightroom identity plate to be 1 star for blog, 2 star for social media, 3 star for end of year review post, 4 star for portfolio. It's a different method of star ratings than I've ever used before. And I know it's going to take me a while to remember before it's muscle memory. And yeah, you can rename your identity plate, whatever you want, by going to personalized and then edit identity plate. Anyway, so here's the raw file. This is right now the exact same edits as the original one that I showed you, except that the actual camera profile is swapped out with my custom LUT, which actually looks really good. I don't see much that I would change in this edit. Maybe a little bit warmer or something. But just to give a little bit more context into the scene of what was happening, within a few minutes before, I handed my camera to somebody to take a picture of me with the bride because she asked for that. And then I took a few more pictures of her with other people around her. And these are actually just bounce flash. Okay, this is an open air, complete no light anywhere bounce flash photo, bouncing my flash off the side of just the building. It's not a particularly tall building. What you see in the background just continued on behind us, and I'm just bouncing off the wall. I'm telling you, you can always find something to bounce flash off of and get this beautiful soft quality of light. Anyway, I don't want to digress too much. This was moments before the actual photo of the two of them that I made. This is just super high ISO. Let's see, at the time that's 51,000. That's crazy. Where he was having a moment to just kind of be sick. Here's another picture. This is not the final edit. I'm not sure what's happening here. Yeah, something like that. And it is all just complete videographer light. The main light source of the background here is just this videographer's light that's set up right here. Just cranked up pretty bright. And then I gave the videographer my video light to kind of fill out some of their details here in the foreground. And then we switched spots. So that's a really collaborative way to work with videographers, to just, I'll hold the light for you, you hold the light for me, boom, we're done. And a lot of times videographers aren't used to shooting at night. I think that'll change as technology continues to improve. And autofocus and everything at night tends to get easier. But most videographers, even today that I work with, still don't do a ton of night stuff. It's sort of, and it's definitely an afterthought for them. And by having them come along and then kind of switch off of who's holding light, that makes it really, really easy for everyone. So editing this from scratch, I'm going to use my main preset right now and just pull in some dehaze to kind of bring back some of that selective punching through where I can see her face. I'm gonna warm this up a little bit, right about there. Pull back the highlights. That's nice. And then I'm gonna crank my little profile pretty heavily. This is a lot more than I normally would do, but I really want to cut through all that haze really nicely. Go to color grading. Let's add a little bit of my favorite mid-tone 41, which I have an entire Patreon post about. And yeah, let's make the shadow hue more of a purple. I'm really digging that. Now, something that's left over here are the masks from my original edit. So I'm going to turn those off just to show you what they're really doing. So this mask is adding blue to the upper left, and this mask is adding reddish orange to the upper right. And this one is darkening that, but I actually think I'd prefer that off, this darkening one. I kind of like right where we landed here. I'm going to add just a bit more mid-tone 41 and then bring in a little bit more warmth in my white balance. And yeah, looking between the two photos, I like them both equally. I delivered both to the client, but this is my preference in terms of like what I showcase in my portfolio or blog posts or what have you, because again, I really like to see the full face, at least the profile or more of both people in the shot. And since I'm not seeing the groom at all, understandably in this moment, it's fine that I don't have that much of a connection with her eyes. And I kind of like the candidness that it brings with her kind of looking down, but either are fine. Again, this was shot with a Nikon D4. These are the camera settings, 1/320th of a second, f1.4, ISO 400. Should have lowered my ISO a good bit just to retain a little bit more dynamic range because it is such a contrasty scene. And I have more than enough light from the video light and everything else, and I have also some headroom with the shutter speed, like 1/320th of a second is way faster than I need to get, a reasonably handheld shot. But there it is, 85 at 1.4. If you have any questions at all, let me know. The article version of this is, of course, available on my Patreon, like always. And yeah, I'll be back soon with more. Let me know what you thought of this. If there's anything you want me to change in the formatting or stuff you want me to talk about. As always, thank you so much for your attention, and I'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.